So the lightweight division's a little bit crazy right now. Grant Dawson just got knocked out by Bobby Green in 33 seconds. You've got so many of these lightweight prospects that people were swearing on their fucking mother's grave that they would be top 5 within a year, and so many of them have lost. And it made me just think, number one, tier list, easy content. Number two, out of all these failed prospects for the UFC, who is actually still around? Who is actually legit? Who could actually make a run at the belt? Yeah, I comprised a list of most of those prospects. Some older prospects in there as well. Like obviously Hector Lombard is not going to be in the still promising tier. And just to explain the tiers, we've got still promising, not quite good enough, overhyped.
You guys were just another fighter, just another 170-pound chicken, but now you guys or chicken salad. Chicken salad, baby.
So without further ado, let's start with the first guy on the list, who is Super Sage Northcutt. Now this guy, I know a lot of people just remember Dana pushing him super hard because he was like a good looking guy. But he was actually on a 7-win streak coming into the UFC. You know, it wasn't all about his looks. He could actually fight. And if you look at his 2 losses, Brian Barberena and Mickey Gall, although Mickey Gall kind of didn't really do anything impressive, they're not terrible losses. And one thing a lot of people don't realise is Sage actually was cut from the UFC or released, or however you want to word it, on a 3-fight win streak. So yeah, he wasn't as terrible as people make him out, but he did go over to 1 and get his face absolutely crushed in by Cosmo. So, you know, ultimately, how good was he? I'd say Sage Northcutt fits perfectly in overhyped. You know, that's exactly what he was. Dana overhyped him, the machine, the UFC machine, put a lot of stock into him, and he ultimately just wasn't good enough. Next, we've got Giga Chikadze. Now, if I'd made this tier list 6 months ago before his return, it probably would be a lot different. He has just come back and beat Alex Caceres, so, you know. So Giga Chikadze was a kickboxer, and he went 2-5 in his last 7 fights and decided to fully switch to MMA. Originally debuted on the Contender Series but ended up losing that debut. And he actually won 7 fights in the UFC, including Cub Swanson and Edson Barboza. Again, the Edson Barboza fight is well remembered, but I feel like everybody forgets that he beat Cub. I know Cub isn't exactly, you know, championship level anymore, but still an impressive win. He obviously kind of got throat checked by Cater, so obviously there is that. I don't think he's overhyped because I still think he has got some promise, but I don't think he's going to make a run for the belt. I think Cater ultimately exposed him a little bit too much, so I'm going to slot him in not quite good enough. And then once more fighters are in this tier, we'll order them around because I think he'll be quite far at the back of this tier. Next we've got Gregor Gillespie, NCAA Division 1 wrestler. He was on a 13-fight win streak coming into the fucking UFC, bro. This guy was hyped. A lot of people forget. Dana was doing his if you don't know, now you know bullshit with this guy. And if you look at his record, he was active. You know, he was fighting at least twice a year, and then he gets KO'd by Kevin Lee, takes 2 years off, he fights, and he's taken another 2 years off, and he hasn't been in the case since 2021. So as far as skill, I think that KO to Kevin Lee did ultimately show his level a little bit, but come on, you know, everybody gets caught, and he's looked pretty good outside of that. I think I'm going to put him in not quite good enough. I would put him in still promising if he wasn't 36 years old. And we got the man that finished Gregor Gillespie in a fucking absolutely amazing KO. I'll put the clip in here and risk getting my shit clapped by the UFC. So Kevin Lee is another one of these guys. A lot of these prospects lost on their debut and then went on a crazy run after. He went 9-1 in the UFC, and then he was matched up with, you know, the boy, Tony Ferguson. And honestly, it was a close fight. There's no shame in losing to Tony, especially not back then. He got subbed off his back. I think he had a bad staph infection. It was a bad camp, you know. A lot of people were saying at the time, maybe on another night, Kevin Lee would have got it. His next 8 fights after Tony went 3-5, so not great. And then recently he fought for Kretinov and got absolutely smoked. I think the thing with Kevin Lee is he fought the best too early. I think he peaked too early, and ultimately he couldn't adapt his game. Kept switching weight classes, trying to fix the problem, but yeah, I think Kevin Lee just peaked too early. I'm going to put him in not quite good enough again because he's definitely better than Sage Northcutt, but obviously I can't put him in still promising because although he isn't super old, I think he's early 30s, you know, he's retired, so he has to go in not quite good enough because he wasn't quite good enough to get that belt. Now this is a little bit of a weird one because if you only recently started watching MMA or started watching sort of in the last few years, you might not even know who this guy is. And he doesn't really fit the term prospect because when he came into the UFC, he'd already fought so much and had such a huge win streak. This guy had a 25 fight win streak in numerous other promotions, including Bellator. He was super hyped up, man. A lot of people were excited to see what he could do in the UFC. He's another one of these guys that lost his debut, and then he fought Paul Harris, who was a piece of shit. And then he beat Nate Marquardt and Jake Shields, which are 2 decent wins, but after that he would lose his next 6 fights and get cut from the UFC. So after a 25 fight unbeaten streak, he went 3-8 in the UFC and got cut. So it shows the level that the UFC is at. Again, I'm going to put him in not quite good enough. Great fighter, but obviously I can't put him in still promising because, you know, he isn't fighting anymore. I think he fought on Eagle FC. So next one has a special place in my heart. I was a huge Darren Till fan. I have a picture of Darren Till to my fucking left right here. I was huge on Darren Till, man. I thought he was really going to get that belt, welterweight English champion. Obviously, we went on to get Leon, so it was, you know, it happened anyway. But yeah, 17 fight win streak. Obviously butchered Cerrone. Got that close decision against Wonderboy, and then they just threw him to Tyron Woodley, pushed him way too fast. He was kind of like the experiment where they thought, with these future prospects like Sean O'Malley, we should take our time and not rush, because he threw Darren Till to Woodley, and Woodley fucking countered him with a right hand. When do you ever see Woodley doing that? You know, threw him to the wolves too fast, and then he got flatlined by Jorge Masvidal, went up to middleweight, had a very close fight with Kelvin, and then lost every other fight after that. 3-fight losing skid. It really pains me to do this, but I think Darren Till overhyped. Definitely in front of Sage. How do I do this? Definitely in front of Sage. I would have put him in not quite good enough, but I think Dana overhyped him. The machine overhyped him, so I think he fits perfectly in that bracket. I don't think he was as good as a welterweight as Chikadze or Kevin Lee, or lightweights and featherweights respectively. You know, Paige Van Zandt now. Beat Tisha Torres in Invicta, which is obviously aged pretty well. Attractive woman, so every attractive woman in the fucking UFC gets a big push. Similar to Sage Northcutt, they were kind of being pushed at the same time as like, look, you know, not all fighters are tribal tattoo tap out wearing thugs, you know. We've got these supermodel looking fucking people. She went on a 4-fight win streak and then lost to Rose Namajunas, which is obviously no shame. Rose is one of the best in the division. And then she went 2-3 in the last 5 and got cut from the UFC. I think Paige Van Zandt should be in. I think she needs to go chicken shit. No disrespect. I just think. I mean, she lost to Jessica Rose Clark, so I'll leave it there. Johnny Walker. Now, again, if I'd have made this tier list a couple of years ago, I'd have probably gone straight to Chicken Salad. Made his debut for the UFC on the Contender Series and made a big impact. His record was 13-3 when he came in, so he was pretty experienced. And he actually beat Khalil Roundtree, which is one of my favourite fighters, so instantly I took a notice to this guy. Obviously, everybody remembers, if you were around, everybody was like, this is the fucking guy to beat John Jones. Picked up 2 more wins, injured himself with that dumbass celebration, and then he lost to Corey Anderson and Krylov, which is another one of my favourite fighters. He would then go on to beat Ryan Spann and then lose to Thiago Santos and Jamal Hill. Obviously, Jamal Hill went on to get the belt shortly after that, so there's no shame in that. Then he picked up 3 wins. Kutalaba, Paul Craig, and Anthony, why are you attacking my family, Smith?
Why do you attack my family? Oh, attacking my family. What?
And they've actually given him a pretty big shot up the rankings against Ankalaev. So if he beats Ankalaev and gets a title shot, I don't think he'll beat Ankalaev, but I think we put him in still promising. Johnny Walker, the first fighter in the still promising to Edmund Shabazian. Now this one's crazy. A lot of people were high on this guy, man. You know, he looked great. He again made his debut on the Contender Series and won. I think he had like a 6-0 record when he made his debut on the Contender Series. This guy hadn't had many fights at all, but he looked experienced. You know, he picked up 4 wins in the UFC. Including Brad Tavares, who, you know, he's kind of like the gatekeeper of that division, so if you can beat Brad Tavares, usually you can make a decent run. He would then lose 3 fights on the bounce, getting finished twice, got a win back, and then got finished by Anthony Hernandez in that last fight. Crazy, because he did look super promising at one point, very young kid. I'm doing a Dana White now, calling people fucking kid. Did look promising. I'm going to put him in not quite good enough, and I'm going to put him behind Gregor Gillespie, because Gillespie only got caught once by that head kick, and I think Shabazian has lost a few more times, so I have to kind of put him behind Gregor, but in front of Kevin Lee. I think that's a good spot for him. Uriah Hall looked absolutely terrifying in the Ultimate Fighter. Was very gun shy after he almost killed Adam Sella. I mean, he almost broke his neck with that fucking spinning hook kick, so I kind of understand, but some people, they really hurt someone in MMA and it kind of changes them. They kind of don't want to do it anymore. The same kind of thing happened to Rory McDonald. He eventually just started saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to hurt people anymore. And I get it, you know. Uriah Hall ultimately lost the Ultimate Fighter final to Kelvin Gastelum. I think he went 10-8 in the UFC. And then he left, or he got cut. I don't know what happened with him, but he's now doing the influencer boxing stuff. I think he fought Le'Veon Bell, the NFL guy. So yeah, he's doing that kind of stuff. And I think he's actually scheduled to fight Jake Paul. So maybe not scheduled, but there's rumors going around. I don't want to call him overhyped because I think he is good, but I don't also really want to put him on not quite good enough. He went 10-8. I'll put him at the back of not quite good enough. Grant Dawson. No, he's a bit of a weird one because everybody gets caught, right? You know, a lot of fighters get caught. He just fought Bobby Green, 33-second knockout. There's only so much you can judge from a fight like that. Last couple of performances have been dominations, so I think Grant Dawson's promising. I'm going to put him in still promising. I'm actually going to put him above... No, I'm going to put him below Johnny Walker because Johnny Walker's actually closing on a title shot. My phone just died with all my notes on it, with everybody's record and everything like that. So I'm just going to be talking out my fucking ass for the rest of this shit. Ben Askren, I kind of had to put him in there because this is UFC prospects, not just MMA prospect. Ben Askren came into the UFC, obviously he was one and Bellator champ. He ultimately just came in too late. I think if he came in earlier in his career, he would have had more success. Obviously got the win over Robbie Lawler, but it was controversial. And then Jorge Masvidal just ruined his whole life. I obviously can't put him in still promising because he's not around anymore. I'm going to put him in not quite good enough, behind Gregor. But if he was too old, if he came into the UFC earlier, I think he would be higher on this list. Brad Riddell, hit and miss fighter, you know, fun fighter, will kind of just be on those sort of prelim, you know, scrappy fights. CKB guy, so there was a lot of hype behind him being like the lightweight guy of CKB. Obviously you've got Dan Hooker as well, but Brad Riddell had a few good fights. You know, he beat Drew Dober, so that win, you know, ages better by every win that Dober picks up because he's still winning, he's still being consistent. Brad Riddell, I would say overhyped. I would say not quite good enough, but I don't even think Brad Riddell is top 5 material, so maybe not even top 10 material, so I can't really put him in the not quite good enough with people like Arman Azaitar. This guy's had a weird career, you know. He came into the UFC, was super hyped, took a couple of years off, I think. I remember this guy was rumoured to fight Paddy, and the Weasel made a video like, don't do it, he's gonna fucking murder Paddy, he's gonna rip his fucking lungs out. Azaitar would come back and get finished in the first round by Matt Favola, I believe, and then the fight after got finished again. 2 first round KOs. Azaitar, I would say, definition of overhyped. Gamrot, still promising. I think he just fought Fiziev. Fiziev injured his leg. Obviously it was a bit of a dodgy win. You can't really, you know, credit it to Gamrot, no matter how much he says that he focused on blocking body kicks for the camp. Been gifted a couple of close decisions that he probably shouldn't have, you know, nobody's arguing that, but I think you can't put him in not quite good enough. He hasn't really had the chance to prove it. He obviously fought Benny, and Benil kind of put him on blast, you know, showed, hey, this isn't going to be easy. You're not just going to run through his older guys, but definitely still promising. I think he can make a run at the belt. So Guram, again, some of these prospects, man, people were fucking swearing that these guys were going to be top 10, top 5 by the end of this year, you know. But yeah, Guram, I forget who he fought. I just remember he had a great 2 rounds and then he just crumbled in the third. You saw a similar thing when Strickland fought Magomedov. You know, just the gas tank wasn't there. They took a little bit of pain and crumbled, you know. Guram was super high. I don't know if I can put him in not quite good enough, you know. Again, I think he goes right next to Azaitar. I think he's definitely got more of a chance to bring it back. I couldn't put him in not quite good enough just because... I don't know. Maybe we put him in not quite good enough, but maybe put him all the way at the back. He does look really good when he's on. So is Magulov. Now this one, some people might disagree because he got absolutely dominated by Grant Dawson, but I'm going to put him at still promising. Now I do believe he's retired. I just think he's really good. I don't know, man. No, probably not quite good enough. At the front of not quite good enough, because you can't be getting dominated in the grappling like that by Grant Dawson. You just can't. You're not going to get anywhere in the division, especially not lightweight. So I'll put him in not quite good enough. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think I want to say he was on like a 19-fight win streak. Again, I've lost my notes. My phone's dead. But to go from a huge double-digit win streak like that, mopping up people in all different promotions, and coming to the UFC and getting some wins there, to watch him get like 50-46 or whatever it was by Grant Dawson, just crazy sport, man. And finally, somebody that probably shouldn't even be on this list because he hasn't necessarily failed the prospect challenge. Had an unfortunate injury against Gamrot last weekend, but ultimately not his fault. The only reason I put him on is because everybody wrote Gaethje off. Everybody was like, nah, Gaethje's old, this is the passing of the torch, this is the changing of the guard, and that was said about a lot of guys on this list. Fiziev did kind of get shown levels towards the end of that fight. He was gassed, but definitely still promising. I would actually put Fiziev at the top of still promising, and I would probably put Gamrot probably there, because I do think Gamrot will get a title shot. I do think Fiziev can get a title shot. He's a great fighter. I just hope that he doesn't get injured anymore, to be honest. So yeah, big recovery to Fiziev. Please come back and make a run at this belt. But yeah, man, that's it. I just wanted to get a video out today. I want to start getting some content up on the channel, so I'll put the tier list link in the description if you want to do it yourself. I don't know why anyone would, but I'll see you in the next one. Yeah.